Hello and welcome back to the channel where once again it's time for another PlayStation game review. With us today taking a look at a game that many people not only consider one of the most important, influential racing games of all time, but quite simply one of the most important games of all time as well. I am of course talking about the original Gran Turismo, which first saw release in December of 1997 in Japan before coming out in May of 1998 in North America and PAL territories. So before I go on to talk about what I think Gran Turismo has to offer, I think it's worth taking a quick look at racing games prior to the release of Gran Turismo and the kind of material and content that they offered, because I feel Gran Turismo really did transform what racing games could offer you. Prior to its release, the big games on the PlayStation in terms of racing games in 1997 had been the likes of Test Drive 4 and Need for Speed 2. Test Drive 4 offered you 14 cars and 5 tracks, and Need for Speed 2 offered you 8 cars and 7 tracks. If we move across to the Saturn and perhaps some of the bigger racing games we'd seen on there, Sega Touring Car came out in 1997. That only offered you 4 cars and 4 tracks, and Sega Rally, which was obviously a slightly older title, only offered you 3 cars and 4 tracks. If we take a look at the N64, it's quite similar there. Multi-Racing Championship, another 1997 racing game, offered us 10 cars but only 3 tracks. And even Mario Kart offered you the choice of 8 races and 16 tracks. You can see that games back then didn't really give you a huge number of cars and a huge number of tracks to race on, which I feel is one of the things that Gran Turismo really did completely transform. Now, like always, I'll be talking about what it performs like in terms of visual, sound, gameplay, content and lifespan, and of course ultimately whether it's still worth playing today and where it may potentially feature in our PlayStation Top 10. So once the main menu comes around, you'll see you've got arcade mode, simulation mode, replay theatre and options, with arcade and sim modes being the 2 main modes at play. Once you're in options, you've got a few things you can change. You can change a few things to do with 2-player settings like number of laps, tyre damage, whether there's a handicap on or off. You can also change starting viewpoints, whether you want the map on or off, and then alter the control pad setup as well. So like always, I'm going to start with visuals first, and I think I'd be fair in saying that Gran Turismo completely revolutionized the way that racing games were viewed on a home console. Whether we're talking about previous PlayStation games, N64 games or Sega Saturn games, absolutely no racing games on any system had offered the level of realism in terms of visuals that Gran Turismo did for when it came out in December of 1997. Quite possibly, the biggest thing with the visuals was how incredible all of the cars within the game looked. There hadn't been any racing games previously that had offered the level of detail that Gran Turismo did in regards to vehicles. Not only did all of the cars look amazing, the reflections on the vehicles within the game and the races were nothing short of breathtaking for this point in time as well. And if this wasn't enough, the visual variety between all of the vehicles within the game was very strong, as there was well over 100 cars within the game from a variety of manufacturers, and along with the ability to race modify the large majority of the vehicles as well. One thing that you would never feel the game lacks is visual variety in regards to the cars at your disposal or that you race against. Now, to complement the fantastic looking cars, we've also got some brilliant looking courses as well. Not only are they well designed to drive on, but there's a great sense of visual variety within the 11 courses that the game has to offer. Some of the courses have a more traditional racing feel, with stands where the spectators would view, whereas others will see you racing through forest areas, mountains, or even during the night, with some quite nice lighting effects in these races too. And if this isn't enough for you, the game actually performs very well too. There isn't really any noticeable slowdown within the game, and the draw distance is right up there with some of the best on the system, despite the fact that the game looks so good. Some people might say, oh, there's only 6 cars in a race and they may be justified for saying that's a slight downside, but personally, I would much rather have a fantastic, consistent running game with only 6 cars on a track rather than suffer from a huge amount of slowdown for the sake of having a few extra cars within each race. The quality of the visual presentation of the game doesn't just rate really highly within the game itself, because the menu presentation is actually very strong too. Everything's well laid out, it's easy to read and quite straightforward to navigate, even though there's actually quite a lot of options to negotiate with, especially when you're in the simulation mode and you're upgrading and tweaking your vehicles. It really is difficult to put any downers on Gran Turismo on the whole, and in fact, in summary, I think when you put it all together, it's just an incredible package in terms of its visual presentation and its performance. So moving on to the sound effects and music next, and Gran Turismo utilizes licensed music from bands like Garbage, Manic Street Preachers and Ash, and it all sounds great, whilst it's not necessarily up there with some of the more arcade-style racing games in terms of music that we'd seen in previous years, especially on the Saturn, because that had some absolutely quality tunes in some of the games that had been specifically composed for them on that platform. What we do have is a variety of tracks that are perfectly fine to race to, but the strength for me of the music is actually all of the other tunes within the game, in my opinion. All of the tunes that you'll hear within the various menus, such as when you're viewing different manufacturers' vehicles, are where the levels of nostalgia may hit you if you played this game when it first came out. There's actually a certain level of relaxation to a lot of these tunes, and they all blend together very well. In terms of the actual sound effects within the races and the vehicles, they were, at the time of the game's release, in my opinion, the best we'd ever had in a console racing game, and they stand the test of time very, very well. As you modify your vehicles and increase their power output, it would change the sound effects of the vehicles too, meaning that Gran Turismo offered a truly unique sound experience for when it was released. So of course, like I always do, in summary, I'll give you some examples of the music that you can find within Gran Turismo. So moving on to the gameplay next, and it's another area that set Gran Turismo apart from all of the other racing games that had came before it, mainly because of the incredible depth that the game offered upon its release. Never before had a console game offered you so many different cars to play with so many tuning and tweaking options for each of the cars within the game. It was absolutely mind-blowing to have all of this within a game on the humble PlayStation. Now the game is actually split up into 2 distinct modes, an arcade mode and the simulation/Gran Turismo mode, with the arcade mode providing a more accessible experience for the casual racing fan, primarily as you don't need to worry about tuning or altering the cars as they are ready to go, and the simulation mode, which gives you a much more in-depth and complete approach in regards to tuning, purchasing and tweaking all of your vehicles as you progress through the variety of license tests and competitions that the game has to offer. In terms of the actual handling of the cars though, it would be fair to say that nothing at all at this point in time came close to what Gran Turismo offered, as all of the cars within the game felt and handled differently from one another, and it meant the variety on offer was truly staggering. And if you use the PlayStation dual analog / dual shock controller, you'll have a fantastic control over all of the cars as well. And whilst the game is perfectly playable with a D-pad, you don't quite have that same element of control that you do if you use the analog controller. Something else I want to add as well is that there's a genuine feeling of satisfaction within this game as you play through all of the competitions and win more powerful cars, purchase more powerful cars, and then take them into other competitions to test out their potential on the track. There's a genuine feeling of satisfaction doing this, and actually I'm going to go on record and simply say that I think at the time of its release in December of 1997, Gran Turismo was the very best playing racing game available. So moving on to the content and lifespan, and yet again it's more positive stuff because I feel Gran Turismo excels in this area as well. It's actually very difficult to say what the strongest aspect of the game is, whether it's the visuals, whether it's the sound, whether it's the way it plays, or whether it's the huge amount of content that the game has to offer. For starters, we've got a whopping 140 cars from a variety of manufacturers within the game and 11 different tracks, 10 of which can be raced in reverse as well. It's safe to say that no other racing game from this era came anywhere close to the wealth of cars that Gran Turismo had to offer when it came out in 1997. In terms of content within each mode of play, the arcade mode starts with 4 tracks and a few cars on offer from each of the manufacturers. When the 4 races on offer have been won on easy, normal and hard, you'll then unlock more cars and courses. If you manage to win everything that the arcade mode has to offer, you'll see the ending sequence and also unlock the GT Hi-Fi mode as well. But the main bulk of the game is without a doubt held within the simulation mode, which sees you take on a variety of license tests in order to gain the 3 different licenses that the game has to offer, and then purchasing and upgrading your vehicles as you progress through the wealth of competitions on offer. There are 4 main Gran Turismo trophies within this mode of play, and completing all of these will also give you access to the ending sequence and the GT Hi-Fi mode, which is, I might add, a time trial mode of the 3 nighttime tracks, but with the game running at a much higher frame rate. Winning the majority of competitions within the simulation mode will also grant you with prize cars that you can choose to keep in your garage and then use yourself, or alternatively sell for more credits. As well as the 4 main Gran Turismo trophies and special competitions, you could also take part in single races, time trials, and also test out your cars to see which ones perform best in terms of short bursts of speed, or indeed their top speeds as well. It's quite an addictive mode actually, in terms of going through your garage and testing out all of your cars in terms of their 0 to 400 meter speed, 0 to 1000 meters, or indeed testing out their highest top speed. Of course, the ultimate challenge within the simulation mode though is of course trying to gain the gold certificates in all of the license tests so that you can unlock the additional cars from each license test, and also challenging yourself to complete the 3 endurance races within the game that will all take over 90 minutes to complete. In all fairness, I could probably talk about the amount of content that I feel Gran Turismo possesses for a very long time, because it simply dwarfed anything that any other racing game before it had offered. In fact, it would probably be fair to say that the arcade mode alone offers more than the majority of other racing games from this point in time. It has a 2-player split screen, it has time trial modes as well, and when you add this onto the wealth of content within the simulation mode, it's fair to say that Gran Turismo has an absolutely incredible amount of content and a truly fantastic lifespan. Now, there is one thing I want to briefly mention before I go on and talk about whether Gran Turismo is still worth playing and if it can feature in our PlayStation Top 10. And of course, you've guessed it, it is the replays, because they were quite simply jaw-dropping for the time this game came out. The multiple different camera views that the replays took on added an amazing sense of cinematic quality to them, and they genuinely added to the overall experience that Gran Turismo gave you. It's very hard to really summarize what they brought to the game, because they genuinely did add to it. And yes, replays weren't new in games at this point in time, but they had never had this level of quality ever before. So of course that does leave me with my two final questions. Is Gran Turismo still worth playing now, and where does it feature in our PlayStation Top 10? Now, if you've never played this, or indeed if you played it when it came out and you're revisiting it now, it's still so enjoyable to play. It still has an incredible level of depth in terms of tuning and tweaking the cars, and it still has a great number of cars within the game as well. And to cap it all off, it's still thoroughly enjoyable to play in this day and age now. Yes, it doesn't look as impressive as it did when it first came out, but by PlayStation 1 standards, it's still one of the very best looking games on the console. And when you're looking at racing games on the whole throughout the entire duration of the PlayStation's lifespan, it really only did get surpassed by its sequel, Gran Turismo 2. Now, of course, the final question is, where does it feature in our PlayStation Top 10? At the moment, Pro Evolution Soccer is number one. That's still a fantastic game. Yes, it was only a slightly modified version of ISS Pro Evolution 2, really, but it's still a brilliant game. But even though that game is fantastic, there can be no denying that Gran Turismo is on a whole nother level to anything that is currently in our PlayStation Top 10, which is why it's coming in at number one. It is a fantastic game to play, even now, all these years after it originally came out. It literally has everything you could possibly want from a racing game, especially for a game that came out towards the end of 1997. It really did utterly annihilate anything that was already out on the PlayStation, anything that was out on the Nintendo 64, and anything that was out on the Sega Saturn. It was miles ahead of anything that any of the systems could offer at that point in time. Now, of course, these are just my thoughts and my thoughts alone, and yes, they are very, very positive thoughts, because I genuinely feel Gran Turismo is still a fantastic game now. But of course, I'm always interested in hearing everybody else's opinions on the games I take a look at, and Gran Turismo is no exception. So of course, like always, let me know your thoughts on Gran Turismo down below. Do you hold it in as much of a high regard as I do, or do you think its quality has diminished over the years? Let me know with your thoughts down below, and like always, I will be back in the near future with another review. Goodbye for now.